don't need my clippers though, right? Not here.
No, I mean, I feel naked without my clippers if I'm anywhere near a stick, but if you don't, I mean, it's cold. Shawl, clippers. So I don't like having shit hanging off my belt.
I like to make sure I have my tools on me too. Oh my God. I feel naked without my tools. Now I know how a man feels.
Well, some. Okay.
Will you be able to do this?
Yeah, we're getting there. We'll get there. I have faith. Okay, stop fidgeting.
Okay, I'm fidgeting.
Just real quick, I just want to talk about what
This is all strictly business.
I'm here with my good friend, Gretchen Gavlahn on Instagram. She's a talented artist and creative person. She's either kind of shy or she's super extroverted and overcompensating and exploding all over the place with no filter. Is that about right?
That's accurate.
That's accurate. She has an infectious energy and enthusiasm for life, so I'm glad to have her on this project today. We've been talking for a while about making baskets, and today we're going to make baskets. We're going to go collect willow. We're going to do a multi-video series on everything start to finish, and we're also going to process a couple hides for rawhide so we can integrate some rawhide into those baskets as well. This is what we're working with today. These are selected cultivars that are grown specifically for basketry. They have long, slender, evenly tapered rods. The type of baskets we're making today are these kind of like larger elements. They're pretty, relatively heavy and rigid. I made all of these baskets over the last, 25 or 30 years. They're quite durable. This one has seen a lot of abuse and use. It's a laundry basket, and if I'd repaired it when it started to break, it would still be going pretty good. This basket I made when I moved to the homestead. I've been here 14 years, so it's at least 12 years old. Heavy use, like daily use, just packed full of groceries, like so heavy that I was afraid the handle was going to break. Vegetables, rocks, everything, and it's still super solid. I just had to replace the handle recently because they break all the time. But these are very durable. If you use good willow and you do a good job, these are incredibly valuable tools, and there's no substitute for a basket, right? I mean, a box is not the same. If it doesn't have a handle, it's not the same. If this is on the ground in the garden, I just walk by and scoop it up if I'm picking apples or vegetables or something like that. Everything else, it's either too heavy or, not the right shape, and plus you can make them in any shape that you want. So I would like to see a revival of basketry in America in a practical sense of having, high quality baskets like this available that people actually use in their daily lives and that are produced more locally and aren't just kind of like an art thing where you're going to pay like $100 for a basket or something like that. And that's how things used to be. Baskets like this used to be in daily use by everybody. A lot of the import baskets you get now, they just fall apart super fast because the willow, I don't know what it is, but the willow is really weak, and a lot of them aren't made very well. We're going to put a couple of hides on in lime to dehair them to make some rawhide, and then we're going to go down and we're going to harvest some willow, put it out in the sun so it wilts down a little bit to get rid of some of the moisture, and then probably like next week we'll start weaving. You ready?
Yes. Let's do this.
So first step, we're just going to rinse this a couple of times to get most of the salt out. Maybe do 2 rinses before we put it in the lime. This is a tub of lime putty. If you want to know about lime and hides, watch my video on what lime to use for tanning. And if you want to know how to burn lime, watch my videos on burning lime. Mix that with some water. You might need a little more, but we'll start with this much. This lime putty is really strong. It's stronger than the dry hydrated lime. Maybe fill that like halfway up.
The next one too?
Yeah. Okay, this is called a coppice, and that just means that you cut the plants all the way to the ground, and then they grow back and they grow the stuff that you want to use, the shoots for basketry or for whatever you're doing. In the case of willow, you cut it every year unless you want to grow like much larger rods for making furniture or something like that, like the hoops for the rims and bases of baskets and handles and stuff like that. With willow, for weaving baskets, you're pretty much cutting it down every year. And no, that doesn't hurt the plants. They respond really well. They'll just grow back. It's just perfectly normal for them, and that's because they tend to grow in riparian areas, right, along rivers and creeks, and they constantly are getting flooded and damaged and pushed over and washed over. They're designed to spring back and grow vigorously the next year. If you're gathering willow in the wild, you basically have to manage it like that. Unless you have a river where they get pushed down every single year, you need to go in there and cut it, and then after that you can go and every time you harvest it, if you just harvest everything, you'll get a whole new crop of shoots the next year. So what we're doing is basically cutting everything down. Doesn't matter if we're going to use it, if it's too small, too weird, whatever. Everything gets cut back to stubs, and then later on we'll sort that stuff by size. But when we get over to that other willow, that taller stuff, that's a different kind, so we keep that separate.
The yellow, the big tall one.
No, there's another one. Look down. Partway down it gets really tall.
Oh yeah, and dark.
Yeah, different kind.
These fat ones are really hard.
Cut it at a slight angle, like tip your clippers. Yep. See?
Oh, that was way easier.
Yep.
Thank you.
And more of an angle you cut it out, like 45, it'll cut much easier.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. It's like butter in comparison.
Yeah.
I have a good photo idea. Wilt away.
Just gonna wilt it, not dry it, wilt it. Yeah, a little more of that, like sideways and less pressure, like lighten up the pressure, just go slice, 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 slice across. It's not like scraping a buckskin where you need the pressure. And once it's limed, it'll come off even easier.
I didn't realize we were going to hit it multiple times.
Yeah, many times. Because we want to get the line out of it.
Last year I finished a hide, right? So I did the braining and softening and smoking, and then I did another braining and softening.
With brain tanning, you usually go over a couple of times, but just
You do.
to get more stuff off. If you use lime, especially, you need to scrape it a bunch of times.
Oh.
That's where the scudding comes in. But the speed thing is largely about the return. It's like, and just keeping everything really tight, like having no sloppiness and no randomness. It's just like, watch. You know, I'm letting up on the backstroke, and everything's like overlapped, and there's no wasted movement. It's just the arms, boom, boom, boom. And see, I'm kind of keeping the knife really low because that also helps.
Oh yeah. And you're not putting a lot of pressure.
Very light.
Oh, I can do that.
But a lot of the stuff can come off after liming, so. Because this thing is pretty sharp. I mean.
No, I was putting way too much pressure.
Yeah. Yeah, if I want to cut more, instead of pushing harder, I just use more sideways, more slice. And see, you could turn the knife like this, and then it has a natural slicing action, even if you push straight. Like a lot of times, you use like a draw knife or a plane, like that, where it cuts more efficiently if you tip it a little bit, because it has this kind of slicing effect instead of just a straight pushing bulldoze cut. And since you don't have to push as hard, it's less work. Okay, that's the start of this thing being better than it was. We could do a fast time lapse of us filling it, but if we talk, it'll be like chipmunk voices. Okay, that's good. This water is already like saturated with lime, and that's what does the work. It doesn't hurt to kind of stir the stuff up off the bottom, and then preferably you stir it, every day. But by this evening, this will be already starting to swell up and work. All right, this is how we sort the willow by size. Just take a handful, way up near the top, grab it hard, shake it a few times. And there's your first size. Another, maybe like every 6 to 10 inches, depending on how well sorted you want it. So kind of right about here, you'll get some shoots that are short, but they're not tapered that evenly. They have pretty fat butts, but they're short. So what that means is that you're going to have a thick weaver that runs out really fast. These are good for using as spokes, like where they're going to get cut off anyway, because they're kind of a even thickness more. I'll use a lot of these to make cuttings to sell in the web store. So I'm going to look at these, and the ones I kind of want to reject are the ones that are fat at the base and pretty fat up here, or in any way branched or damaged or something like this. I mean, they're perfectly usable. They're just not as nice as, some of these here of this size are not that much bigger at the base than a few of these, but it's much, much longer. So you put this in your basket and start weaving, and it lasts a lot longer. So you don't have to add, material as often. For most of you, you can use these as spokes a lot of the time. I think I'll keep those. And that's pretty much it. All these I'll turn into cuttings for propagation. And here's a bunch more short ones from that same variety. A lot of this stuff is really good for smaller baskets. Like this is a really nice rod. There's nothing wrong with this. It's skinny at the base. Those ones I was just showing you, remember, they had like big butts, but they were not much longer than this. But look how different this is. It has like a butt that's almost half the size, but it's really long. So weaving smaller baskets, this is the stuff you want more than this stuff. I mean, this rod's 6 inches longer, but it's a lot bigger at the base. So just because I want a lot of cuttings to put in my store, because I think they're going to be pretty popular, and they should be, because this stuff is so cool. Every temperate homestead, if there's a place to grow this stuff easy, should have a patch of basketry willow, because it's useful for, not just baskets, but it'll grow these shoots every year, and especially these big robust varieties with the larger rods like this. They're really useful in the garden. They're good for making living fences. Like if you have a nice wet area, you can just plant these like a foot deep in the ground and then weave them together, and they'll grow and make a living fence. There's all kinds of cool stuff you can do. So I want to make all these into cuttings for propagation. All right, let's talk about seasoning this stuff. So typically you want to season this in the shade. It's okay to get them partially dry in the sun. You know, that's not really a problem, especially like this time of year. It's the weak winter sun in February. But you don't want to bake them in the sun, and you don't want them in really hot sun. Conversely, if you're drying them in the shade, you want them to dry at a rate, you know, a steady rate. And if they just sit really green for too long, like there's just no heat and there's high humidity, they can kind of get gunky and turn weird. So, you know, you want them to be drying. Under some conditions, you can actually bundle them up and dry them in bundles, which is, you know, pretty convenient. But if the conditions are marginal, you know, and or if you want them to dry fast, you should lay them out. So a couple different ways to do this. One is you can use willow withies like this. This is called a withy, the shoot. And I'm just going to wrap that around a couple times and then tuck it under itself, maybe like twice. So I'll put it under itself again like that. And then if it's loose, just kind of scoot it down a little bit. Now, this is going to come loose as the bundle starts to dry. And when it does, you can just kind of scoot this down a little bit. And these are, you know, they're not super firm and they'll kind of come loose sometimes, but you know, it's easy to do. So, and there's actually a method to make a more flexible chute for tying those together called cranking, but I'm not going to show that today. Okay, so I'm just kind of wrapping it, but I'm wrapping it over itself, and then I'm going to go under 2, even 3 times if need be, if we can get this a little tighter. Also, you can do this kind of high, like up here, because since the shoots taper off and get bigger towards the butt, if you put it up here and it's a little bit loose, you can just scoot it down again. And again, as it dries, you can kind of tighten it up. You know, if it's a warm place and you have good air circulation, you can actually dry them like this. I'm going to actually loosen this up just a bit so that more air can move through here, kind of in between the sticks more. Okay, another great way to do this is to start with a timber hitch, which you just go around and then just go under itself a bunch of times like that. And it's not even really a knot, it's just wrapped under itself enough that there's a bunch of friction. And that starts it, and then just go up in a spiral. And then at the top, you don't need to tie it in a knot either. Again, just, you know, tuck it under itself. And if you want it to be a little more secure, just do that again. And that's it. And this is pretty easy to tighten when they dry and start to become loose. So this is the larger variety of willow that I have in the store. I think it's probably Polish purple, but it might be this one that was labeled as just red willow. There's a lot of varieties. It doesn't really matter, it's good stuff. Voila! So here I have all my different, you know, lengths of shoots and sizes all conveniently graded out ahead of time. I will put these near my wood stove in the house. Once they're dry, they have to be re-soaked for use. So that you either need to dry them and re-soak them, or preferably wilt them down a little bit before actually weaving with them. Like, you can weave with fresh willow, but it just has a lot of water and your basket will tend to like kind of shrink and loosen up a bit too much. So the ones I put in the sun, I'm just going to put them out there for maybe a couple of days. Winter sun, it's not super hot, it's not super intense, it's not going to kind of like burn the bark or anything and make it look weird. You know, not too dry, but just lose a little bit of that moisture, then they'll be ready to use. If they're dry, you re-soak them in water. You just soak the dry shoots up until they're flexible and go to work. So hopefully these shoots that I'm wilting out in the sun there will be ready next week, and we'll get Gretchen back over here and make a couple baskets.